Let's dive right into this explainer because today we're investigating the compounding factors that have turned the majestic Mount Everest into a truly tragic scene. For decades, we've held on to this highly romanticized idea of conquering the ultimate summit, right? We view it as the absolute pinnacle of human achievement. But today, we really need to contrast that romanticized vision with the stark, often deadly reality of modern commercial climbing. Because Everest is definitely not a picnic spot. Hidden within those beautiful, iconic snowy peaks are horrifying tragedies, and unfortunately, those tragedies are multiplying. So we're going to look closely at exactly how and why 2023 became a deadly turning point, and what it really reveals about this massive industry built on top of one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. 8,848 meters. That's the sheer scale of Everest. And it isn't just the highest peak on Earth. It's literally an environment where human biology fundamentally begins to fail. Once you cross into those upper reaches, you enter what is universally known as the death zone. The oxygen up there is so incredibly thin that your cells actually begin to die off. Your digestion stops, and every single step requires this monumental, agonizing effort of will. But despite that severe biological toll, its legendary status still draws around 600 adventurers every single year who are just absolutely desperate to reach the top. Historically, on average, about 5 people lose their lives doing this annually. It's a known accepted risk, and people are continually willing to take it to satisfy that hunger for adventure. But abruptly, we have to confront a pretty grim reality here. In 2023 alone, a record 17 people lost their lives. That is the highest number of deaths ever recorded in a single year on the mountain. To see that fatality rate more than triple in just one season, it was an absolute shock to the mountaineering community. It really forces us to pause and realize that the rules of survival on this mountain are rapidly changing, bringing the total historical death toll of Mount Everest to well over 325 people. So, the crucial question we're investigating today is exactly this. Why did 2023 become the deadliest year on record? I mean, think about it. With all our modern thermal gear, advanced weather forecasting, and all the tech designed to make climbing easier and safer, what is making this mountain increasingly lethal? The rising death toll tells a completely different story than what we'd instinctively expect from an era of highly advanced modern mountaineering. Section 1. Geography and Early Conquests. To figure this out, let's trace this back a bit. Attempts to conquer Everest, which sits right on the China and Nepal border, really kicked off in the early 20th century. Think about those heroic, isolated first attempts. People marching into the complete unknown with heavy wool and canvas tents, truly testing the limits of human endurance. It wasn't until 1953 that Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary achieved the very first successful summit via the southeast route, and that sparked this massive global desire to reach the peak. But the shift from that era to today is just staggering. We go from those few solitary pioneers charting unknown territory in 1953 straight to 2023, the mountain's most crowded, chaotic, and fatal year yet. And before we go further, we really have to grasp the true environment of this mountain. When you're 29,000 feet up with strictly limited resources, anything can go wrong. Out of the 325 plus people who have died up there, over 200 of those bodies are actually still on the mountain. Because retrieving a body in the death zone is exceptionally dangerous, virtually impossible really, they're left precisely where they fell. Modern climbers literally use these frozen remains, along with abandoned brightly colored tents and clothes, as trail markers to navigate through whiteout conditions. It is sobering reality that makes an already dangerous mountain feel deeply terrifying. Section 2. The Overcrowding Crisis. Now, our investigation brings us to the first major suspect causing these tragedies: severe overcrowding. In just a 2-month window during the spring of 2023, the Nepal government issued 466 climbing permits. When you add in the expert guides and Sherpas required to make the journey happen, you're looking at over 1,200 people on the mountain at the exact same time. Imagine what that looks like. Over 1,000 people swaddled in massive downsuits, trying to squeeze onto a razor-thin, icy ridge where one misstep means falling thousands of feet. And here's the kicker. There's no training or testing required by local authorities to climb. You literally just pay a substantial fee and apply for a permit. So, what does a crowd of that magnitude actually do to someone trying to survive? Jennifer, who is a filmmaker and a 4-time Everest climber, describes a terrifying first-hand reality. She notes that at a certain height, your oxygen drops. If the route is crowded, the journey slows down, and your limited oxygen can run out at any time. It's a logistical nightmare. You're forced to stand entirely still on an icy ledge, freezing, waiting for hours for the long line ahead of you to move. In that time, you're slowly suffocating as those precious, finite resources drop to your back simply run dry. Section 3.
human error, and false promises.
Next up, we have to examine the human element, specifically the dangerous influx of inexperienced tourists. Get this, a staggering 20% of the climbers arriving on Mount Everest in recent years are attempting this extreme physical feat for the very first time. They have absolutely zero prior high-altitude summit experience. They are stepping directly into the death zone as complete novices. And the volume of untrained climbers attempting to basically buy their way to the summit is rapidly growing. And the real tragedy is how this lack of experience actually plays out on the ice. According to experienced Everest guide Guy Cotter and local Sherpas, these unprepared clients trigger a deadly chain reaction. When someone lacks the required physical stamina and completely exhausts themselves on a narrow fixed rope, they stop moving. And when they stop, the entire line behind them stops. Plus, Sherpas note that many novices are placed on the mountain without proper counseling. They start the climb in a rush without full preparation, and sometimes even leave behind essential survival supplies. It's a reckless mistake that doesn't just risk their own lives, it triggers those deadly traffic jams that endanger absolutely everyone. So, who's responsible for this? Well, we have to neutrally note that critics heavily blame tourist agencies for fueling this dangerous influx. There's a systemic issue here where companies are prioritizing rapid financial growth over basic human safety. Expert mountaineers claim these agencies are using false advertising, literally telling customers that no experience is needed to secure more business. They're framing the world's most dangerous mountain as an expensive guided adventure vacation. Section 4. Extreme weather and climate change. Finally, we have to look at the ultimate, uncontrollable suspect in this mystery, the shifting environment. Normally, the temperature on Everest drops to a severe but somewhat manageable average of around -8 degrees Celsius during the peak climbing window. But in 2023, it plummeted to a staggering average of -40 degrees Celsius. Think about what -40 actually does to a human body. Exposed skin freezes in minutes, causing permanent frostbite. Your mechanical climbing and oxygen gear literally ice over and fail. Even breathing the air sears your lungs. Meteorologists attribute this highly unpredictable and lethal temperature drop directly to the severe impacts of global climate change.
Section 5. The need for regulation. So, how do we solve a crisis involving overcrowding, inexperienced climbers, and deadly weather? Well, mountaineering experts firmly believe that immediate steps must be taken. They stress that the primary cause of these accidents is the unchecked trend of issuing permits. Experts argue that the only viable solution is for the government to step in and take immediate control, heavily regulating the number of permits being sold each season. But of course, that highlights a massive economic tension for Nepal, balancing millions in tourism revenue against the heavy moral cost of safety. I want to leave you with this pivotal thought as we wrap up our explainer today. As climate change worsens, making the extreme weather more volatile, and as commercial demand for this status symbol climb surges, who will ultimately take responsibility for the safety of the world's highest peak? Will authorities finally intervene to ensure safety, or will Mount Everest continue to claim more lives in the name of adventure?